It's 7:11 in the morning. The alarm buzzes lightly, just enough to stir you from sleep. You reach over and silence it, your hand brushing against the cool phone screen before your brain has fully registered the day. The room is gray with early light, soft and muted, casting shadows along the edges of the walls. Coffee begins to drip, the aroma slowly filling the kitchen, comforting in a way that feels familiar but slightly hollow. You notice the steam rising from the cup, the faint hum of the coffee maker, and the small sounds of the house waking up. You shower, your movements automatic, the water warm but not invigorating. Clothes are laid out from last night, neutral, comfortable, familiar. The day begins before you even open your mind fully to it, and yet your body moves in rhythm with it, practiced and precise. You pause at the mirror, looking at your reflection, briefly noting the faint lines on your face, the tiredness in your eyes, and the way the routine has become a predictable choreography. There's a quiet hum of anticipation, a tension you barely notice, but it sits in the chest like a weight you can't name. The quiet thought crosses your mind. Is this really living? Or just surviving within the lines someone else drew? You live comfortably. Bills are paid on time. The bank balance isn't frightening, and yet there's an unease you can't shake. You feel capable, yet constrained, successful, yet subtly restless. The routine brings stability, yes, but it doesn't bring ease. Sunday evenings feel heavier than they should. Vacations come and go, but they feel borrowed, a pause that doesn't truly pause anything. There is a nagging inner voice reminding you of obligations not yet fulfilled. Bills to pay, errands to run, emails to answer. Even when nothing urgent is pressing, the thought of what's next lingers in the back of your mind, creating a subtle but persistent stress. The freedom promised by a steady paycheck exists on paper, but rarely in the feeling of your life. Meet Alex. He's 36 years old. He earns $78,000 a year. A number that looks solid on a resume and on paper. A number that friends nod at approvingly and family quietly respect. After taxes, his monthly take-home is roughly $4,600. On the first of the month, seeing that deposit gives him a brief surge of relief. It feels tangible, almost like security. And then, like clockwork, the money begins to leave. He watches the numbers subtract in his mind, visualizing each dollar as it flows out. It's almost like watching sand slipping through fingers. There is a small internal sigh when he realizes that by mid-month, the freedom he imagined at the start has already evaporated. Rent takes $1,600. Utilities are $220. His car payment is $420. Insurance costs $190. Groceries hover around $480. Student loans claim $350. Phone, internet, and streaming subscriptions take another $160. A few minor expenses lunches out. Coffee runs, birthdays consume $250. Even attempting to save $500 each month feels precarious. Single car repair, dental visit, or minor emergency wipes out that buffer instantly. Month after month, Alex has a small leftover, often less than $200. Every choice is measured. Every small indulgence, even taking a day trip or treating himself to dinner, requires quiet calculation. Freedom exists as a concept, but not as a lived experience. He notices the pattern building subtly over years. How each increase in expense or unexpected bill creates a ripple of stress that touches multiple areas of life's sleep, mood, attention, and even relationships. Sometimes he feels guilty for wanting more, even when he can't pinpoint exactly what is missing. This tension is quiet, almost imperceptible to others, but deeply felt inside. Alex's situation is not unique. Millions are living inside the same structure, quietly trapped by a system designed for predictability. The salary system is built to be stable and predictable, which creates comfort but also constraint. Predictability encourages commitments: rent, loans, car payments, subscriptions that anchor people to their paychecks. Housing prices are aligned to what a salaried person can handle monthly. Cars are sold in monthly installments, not by total cost, making them easier to absorb but tying you down incrementally. Subscriptions are smooth and easy, barely noticed until they accumulate into significant recurring expenses. Your income becomes the central gravity point. Obligations orbit it, tethered tightly, and freedom narrows quietly, almost imperceptibly, until it is taken for granted that certain choices aren't possible. This structure repeats across cities, industries, and households. It works because it aligns with human behavior, not because it's malicious. Predictable pay encourages predictable behavior. Predictable behavior maintains the system. Over time, this predictability feels like invisible chains, the weight of obligations growing so slowly that it's almost unnoticed until a person pauses and looks back at the years. The psychological effect is subtle but profound. People feel secure yet anxious, stable yet trapped, capable yet limited. Raises don't break the cycle. Alex receives a promotion. His salary rises to $88,000 a year. At first, he feels relief, a brief lift in his chest, a sense of moving forward. Duh! But then, rent increases slightly with the lease renewal. The car payment jumps as he upgrades to a newer model. Groceries and minor luxuries creep higher because his budget allows them now. Work expectations increase subtly. More meetings, more reports, slightly longer hours. The extra income feels almost entirely absorbed by new expenses and obligations. Stress doesn't disappear. It simply changes form, moving into corners of his life where he hadn't noticed it before. Even the celebrations feel tempered, a small shadow over what should have been moments of enjoyment. The sense of margin he hoped to gain never materializes, replaced by new layers of responsibility. Sarah, 41, provides a second example. She earns $120,000 a year, manages a team, and her lifestyle appears comfortable. Her mortgage is higher, her kids' activities are costly, and her work requires consistent attention. She isn't struggling financially, yet the pressure is real. Her choices are limited not because she is careless, but because the structure of obligations grows alongside her income. Even at higher salaries, the same pattern repeats: stability without autonomy. The more you earn, the more you have to maintain, and the freedom you hoped for rarely materializes. Sarah notices it in small ways: skipping lunch with friends because she has work, delaying hobbies and feeling that even weekends are only partially free. It's a slow, persistent friction that shapes how she experiences life day to day. Most people assume that earning more automatically increases freedom. It doesn't. Income is motion, flows into and out of accounts, covering obligations but rarely creating optionality. Wealth, in contrast, is control. It is the space to make decisions without being bound by immediate financial pressures. Optionality is the real measure of freedom, the ability to pause, to choose, to redirect time and energy. Recognizing the difference between flow and choice shifts your perspective gradually. You start noticing how obligations dominate decisions that appear small, but compound into long-term limitations. You see the subtle friction in everyday life, the way motion replaces freedom. Even a $200 leftover feels more like margin when you understand the context of optionality, not just as a number in a bank account. You begin to recognize that freedom is not measured in paychecks, but in how your time and energy can be spent without automatic constraint. Awareness itself brings calm. It doesn't require drastic changes or quitting your job. It begins with seeing the difference between earning and owning, between spending for short-term relief and spending to create long-term flexibility. Observing where time and energy are committed, where choices are constrained, creates subtle relief. Small adjustments, like deciding which subscription to maintain or which tasks to delegate, compound into meaningful autonomy. Clarity grows quietly. Guilt and anxiety fade when you understand the structural constraints around you are not personal failures. The recognition of patterns allows you to navigate life with intention rather than reactively. Even small acts of noticing pausing before a purchase, reconsidering a commitment can feel like taking a small piece of control back. Over time, these small choices create a landscape of subtle freedom that compounds into meaningful life changes. If this perspective helped you see your own situation more clearly, pause and reflect. Subscribe to explore more calm, thoughtful stories about money, work, and autonomy. Like the video if it gave you insight into how income and freedom are often disconnected. And in the comments, ask yourself, where in your life does stability exist without real freedom? Notice it without judgment. Observe it with curiosity. This quiet reflection is the first step toward understanding how your life could feel more aligned with choice, not just survival. Even small awareness grows over time, shaping the way you live, the way you decide, and the way you move through each day. Every morning, every small decision becomes a chance to notice the patterns, to breathe a little easier, and to reclaim autonomy in subtle, consistent ways.